Welcome, and this is John Hyman from Commercial Real Estate Online. In this brief video, I want to cover some aspects of property handover relative to commercial, retail and industrial property management today. If, by the way, you want more tips and ideas for this part of the commercial property industry, you can certainly get a lot of tips from our website, which is commercial-realestate-training.com. So let's now go to the property management topic, and some of you may have seen this video before, and the fact that I use various aspects of the matrix to talk about and give you some tips and ideas. In this particular part of the discussion, I want to go through the handover aspects which are relative to bringing a new property management into a commercial brokerage or agency. So within handover, once a handover process starts, it is the interaction between the current property manager and the previous property manager, and it is best to have some form of checklist for that purpose so that everything stays on track. And indeed, you probably only have a few days or perhaps a few hours to capture all of the information relative to the property before the other property manager disappears from the equation. And of course, if you don't get all the information, then you can be certainly left quite frustrated, perhaps high and dry when it comes to certain aspects of the property today. So let's have a look at some of these issues on the handover strategy. You can add to this list according to your property type and location, and perhaps some of the things that you do within your property management activity, but these are the main ones, so let's have a look at them. Within handover, as I said, you should have a checklist. So let's move through this area here. This is the arrears check. I would expect you to get a copy of the invoices, all of the invoices that relate to the tenants within the property. Check those invoices against the leases that are current and also the tenants in occupancy today. If there are any arrears at the moment, get copies of letters relating to those arrears, because some tenants may be working through the payment of those arrears, and there'll be letters which support that process. As I said, check out the current arrears so you can understand where they're at and what's going on regards them. The landlord may have given certain instructions regards those arrears, so get those instructions in writing from the landlord or from the file relative to the particular arrears issue. And lastly, there may be some legal actions underway regards some of those arrears. It should be said that if there are arrears in commercial, industrial or retail property, it is better to work through the arrears rather than create a vacancy, because in this property market it can be quite difficult to find a new tenant quickly. Therefore, if you can reach a payment arrangement or process with the current tenant in situ, well then that's probably a good thing, providing they stay within the guidelines of payment and return to normal payment of rental. So that's arrears. Let's go back to the topics again here, and let's look at the checklist itself. Now, I would expect the checklist you use to have these topics for you to chase through. Now, budgets would be budgets for the property relative to expenditure and income. You should get a copy of that. The contractors in the property are the maintenance contractors that work on the essential services and other maintenance issues within the property itself. Here you'll have any issues relative to the landlord that are current at the moment, perhaps copies of correspondence. Get your files updated before the previous property manager disappears with their files and records. You need to know what the landlord has done and what they have instructed regards the property. Also, you'll need to go through the current leases, any licenses or any other forms of occupation relative to the tenancies today. Any maintenance issues that are underway, perhaps maintenance issues for the tenants or perhaps from the common area. Get copies of correspondence in that regard. Over here we've got the outgoings issues. Now, outgoings are those costs required to run the property today. The outgoings will be in the current year, and also they'll be historic. So today's current year outgoings can be compared to previous years, the historic figures. When you know the outgoings that are currently running in the property at the moment, you can compare them to other properties in the local area of the same type and size. That will then give you a perspective as to how well that property is operating in today's terms. Of course, if your outgoings are too high, that will have an impact on the tenants and also on the recovery of rental, and that can be a bad thing depending on the level of outgoings. So basically your outgoings need to be quite sensible within the parameters of a property type locally. You need to compare your outgoings to other properties of a similar type. So within the handover checklist, you also need to know the property use and the compliance relative to the zonings and the council regulations for that property. Make sure that the property is being used in accordance with the permitted uses and the zones that the property sits within. Certainly within the handover checklist, you need copies of reports relating to the property in any particular way. Now, that might be maintenance, it might be tenant matters, it could be lease matters, but get copies of reports for the property. Certainly when you deal with retail properties, you'll find that the reports are more numerous and quite frequently created. And also in the handover checklist, I would ask questions about tenants, the tenants within the property. What do you need to understand regards to those tenants and the questions that you should be asking? And also within the handover, the vacancy marketing. You might have some vacancies in the property today, and the next question will be, well, how are those vacancies being marketed? Is there anything being done to find other tenants for those locations within the property? So there's your handover checklist with the big issues. You can probably add to this list based on your property and your location. So let's go back up in here and have a look at some other issues. And this time I'll choose the landlord contact area. When you work with a landlord, you need to understand certain things, particularly the authorities they're giving you regards the payment of any monies, the transacting of monies, the dealing with tenants, dealing with leases. Understand the authorities that you need to work within. Of course, get those authorities in writing as part of your appointment to manage that particular property. Down here we have contact information relative to the landlord. And when we look at that, you'll need to understand the ordinary contact and also the emergency contact. Be prepared for the emergency events within the property because they will happen, and you'll need to know how you can get through to the landlord when the emergency issues happen. So let's go back here and look at the instructions of the landlord. The landlord will give you particular instructions relative to cash flow, income, expenditure, also leases and tenancy matters, and perhaps even documentation. So get those instructions in writing and adhere to them in a rigid way so that you're not breaching any client and broker relationships there. So the landlord will have certain reports that they require of you on a regular basis. Let's have a look at some of those reports. From the big picture perspective, you should be doing an annual report, and that will be based on the property performance over the last 12 months. That would normally happen at the end of June in each year. That being said, there should also be an asset plan for the property for the current year and in future years going out, so that when you get to the 1st of July, you should have your asset plan for the property for the new period of 12 months. Within the asset plan, you should have income matters, you should have lease decisions, vacancy issues, maintenance issues, all of those things, including capital works, should all be covered so that you can work with the landlord to keep the property on track. That's what the asset plan is all about. It's almost like a business plan. So let's have a look at some financial matters that you will need to report to the landlord on. The financial matters will be the budget for the property, the expenditure that's going through, the income, the outgoings for the property, and any remittances that need to go to the landlord regularly. Perhaps that's twice a month. That is the remittances of the net income. Let's go back here one step and we'll have a look at the other issues beyond financial. We have leases, we have maintenance issues within the property. What sort of maintenance reports need to be provided to the client, the landlord? Perhaps capital works, common area reports, planned maintenance, repairs and maintenance, tenant area maintenance, and also anything that's underway at the moment. So that is maintenance within the reporting situation there. Now, all of that being said, as I said at the start, you'll have an asset plan, you'll have an annual report. But then again, each week you'll be doing a report to the landlord if it's a very busy property, as well as a monthly report with income and expenditure, also lease activity. And then at the end of every quarter, you'll have an update relative to the asset plan. So the property will be reviewed from the monthly activity into a quarterly report and compared against the asset plan. And obviously then any adjustments can be made for the landlord so that the property stays on track relative to income, expenditure, lease activity, maintenance, and other key issues. So those are the big points from this handover process. There are many others here that I can talk about, but perhaps I won't do at this stage. Let's keep the items to that which I have discussed today. So in summary, these are the handover issues relative to commercial, industrial and retail property management. If you have any other questions or would like some more ideas relative to this very complex topic, you can get those from commercial-realestate-training.com. Thanks for listening today. This is John Hyman, and I'll be happy to chat to you again on one of the videos. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and you can get more videos like this on a regular basis. Thanks for listening today.